What's going on, Bottom Line viewers? It's Mitch here of the Bottom Line View, here to give you my top 20 tight ends for fantasy football in 2017. I'm going to rank every tight end in tiers from tier 1 all the way to tier 6. I have 6 tiers for the tight end position. Won't be as many names to talk about, so I can spend a little bit more time to go in depth with each and every player as opposed to the running back or the wide receiver position. If you haven't already checked out the quarterback, running back, and wide receiver July rankings for fantasy football, make sure you do. On the channel, there will be a playlist for the fantasy football draft kit for 2017. In the draft kit, if you don't already know, there's going to be rankings, there's going to be mock drafts, there's going to be player outlooks, and there's going to be a lot more. Also, if you guys are interested in joining the fantasy football league for the Bottom Line View, let me know in the comment section below. We are intrigued to maybe start a fantasy football league this year with myself, Dylan, and a couple other, maybe even Adam, the members of the Bottom Line View here on the channel. But let's get right into the video. Let's talk about the top 20 tight ends in fantasy football for 2017. Starting off in tier number 1, where I only have one player and one name only, and that's Rob Gronkowski. Now, when Rob Gronkowski plays a full season, he's a tight end tier by himself. The reason why Rob Gronkowski is a tier by himself is because there's no other tight end that you would take as high as you would Rob Gronkowski in your leagues. And there's no other tight end in the NFL that gives you as much strength to your fantasy football team, as much purpose, as much potential to your team than Rob Gronkowski. When you have Rob Gronkowski in your lineup, you are basically guaranteed to outperform one of the positions on the opposing team. You're basically guaranteed when you have Gronk on your fantasy football team that you are going to get more points from your tight end than they will. There might be an odd week here or there where he faces a Greg Olsen or a Travis Kelce or a Jordan Reed, where maybe Gronk has a down game and they have a better game, but it's very, very rare. Gronk is arguably already the greatest tight end in NFL history, and his numbers when he's healthy and when he's there, that's the key issue. When he's healthy, it looks like he's healthy. Training camp has started for the Patriots, and he looked like he was on fire. He looks like the best shape of his life. He looks like he's about to have the best season of his career. I actually think Gronk is going a little bit low compared to where people would draft him in the past due to the fact he was injured last season. But if you look at the stats he was putting up, he was on pace to have the single best reception per, yards per reception in tight end history in the NFL. He was averaging 21 yards a catch last season. He was having an excellent season. He had a few really good games in that stretch last season. If he turns in a season the full 16 games like he had last year, he's going to have a spectacular year. He's going to put up over 1,000 yards, over 10 touchdowns, and you can expect him to be basically an elite wide receiver option for you. So when you draft Gronk, it's basically how you feel. What's the risk versus the reward situation? Are you going to, I would probably draft him as soon as the late second. That might seem a little bold for some people, but I feel like the late second is kind of where you get past the elite players for the running back and the wide receiver position, and you're left with kind of those second tier players for those positions. I think it's then time to pick Rob Gronkowski. Keep in mind, a lot of people were picking Gronk in the first round in the last couple of years in fantasy football. So people are kind of down on him this year. That gives you the opportunity to pick him in the late second, where his draft stock may even rise depending on how he plays in training camp in the preseason and how healthy he looks. Because last year, even before the season, he was banged up and people weren't really sure how to take it. But this year, I think Gronk's going to be a machine. I think he's going to be back, and I think he will play at least most of the season this year. And if he does, he's going to help you win fantasy championships. In tier number 2, I have 3 names: Travis Kelce, Jordan Reed, and Greg Olsen. All these guys I feel are relatively the same. I have Travis Kelce second because he had the best fantasy season for any tight end last year. And I feel like with Jeremy Maclin gone, with some kind of inconsistencies, they don't really know who's going to be the second receiver other than Tyreek Hill there. I feel like Travis Kelce is going to have just as good as a year as he had last year. He's going to be a very big proponent of the offense. He's going to be the number one chain mover for this offense. He's going to be the number one target for this offense. So in PPR leagues, I love Travis Kelce, and I think that's a very good pick and a very safe pick for you. The thing about Travis Kelce is he doesn't score a lot of touchdowns for whatever reason. If he does, though, he could put up a year that's even worth mentioning him near Rob Gronkowski in that sort of area, because I think Kelce has that potential. Same with Jordan Reed. Jordan Reed is the same way. If he's not injured like Gronk, he's going to be great, and he's going to be great for you in PPR leagues as well. They lost Deshaun Jackson. They lost Pierre Garçon. The number one guy there is going to be Jordan Reed for Kirk Cousins. They have Jamison Crowder. They have Terrell Pryor. Those guys are great, and I love both of those guys. But Jordan Reed's going to be excellent. Again, very much like Travis Kelce, the chain mover for this offense. He is the number one guy on their offense that can give so many different, matchup issues to a defense. He's a dynamic playmaker in the NFL, a great guy after the catch. I just think Jordan Reed and Travis Kelce are also guys worth picking in the late third, fourth round, or maybe even the fifth round if they slip that far, where you're like, these guys, I know what I'm going to get. With Kelce especially, I know he's probably going to play the full season, and I know I'm going to get some consistency out of this guy. With Jordan Reed, I could have the potential to have a huge ceiling with him, and I could potentially have a Rob Gronkowski season on my hands and even wait a round later to gain that guy in PPR leagues. So for me, I love both these players. If you're willing to pick a tight end early, Gronk, Kelce, Reed, and then the next man are the guys you have to go after. Greg Olsen. Now, Greg Olsen is going to be a guy that doesn't go quite the same range as Reed and Kelce do, because they're not as sexy of picks, or like they're sexier picks is what I meant to say. Greg Olsen is a more consistent, he's the old guy, he's the old man, he's Mr. Consistent, but Greg Olsen's going to give you great PPR numbers. He's going to be consistent for you every single week. He's Cam Newton's favorite target. He still is Cam Newton's favorite target. They didn't bring anyone in to really say, hey, that's going to take away from Greg Olsen. Greg Olsen is the man. He stays healthy, and you can count on Olsen all the way through the season. Expect the Panthers offense to be better this year, which should impact Olsen's numbers in a positive way. So I feel like Olsen is another very safe pick at the tight end position where you're going to get good value for him, and he's probably going to give you the value back when you do pick him. Just don't reach for him, and don't reach for anyone, but just don't reach for these players. I mean, the tight end position is a position that I wouldn't reach for. It's more of a position that, very much like the quarterback position, if the value falls to me, if the Rodgers, if the Bradys, if they fall to me, I'm going to pick them. But if it's my pick and I feel like that's the range where that might be a slight reach for them, and I see a couple other players on the board that I would like to have, I'll go with the running back, I'll go with the receiver, and I'll wait on the tight end. But if a Jordan Reed slips, if a Greg Olsen slips, if a Travis Kelce slips, and especially if a Gronk slips, I'm taking my chances on those players because I know they're going to be elite and consistent options for me every single week, and they're going to give me a positional advantage. After that tier, it kind of starts sorting out. I mean, Jimmy Graham and Tyler Eifert in tier 3 are very, very solid as well. I think Jimmy Graham was good last year. Tyler Eifert, of course, being banged up. Another tight end that's banged up. It's just a position with a lot of injuries. Even Jimmy Graham himself has been injured quite a bit. Jimmy Graham's more of a guy that's going to give you more receptions. He's a guy that's going to give you more catches, and in PPR leagues, he's going to be more of the safe floor guy. With Tyler Eifert, he's going to be more of the high upside, a lot of touchdowns, near 10 touchdowns a season sort of guy. And Andy Dalton's, that's his number one go-to guy, him and AJ Green in the red zone. So Tyler Eifert, I see slipping a lot in drafts because of his injury history. But if you can gain Tyler Eifert on your fantasy team, he's going to be huge for you because this guy, he scores a lot of touchdowns and he can take over and win you weeks at this position. Jimmy Graham, he's kind of more of the Greg Olsen where he's going to give you consistency. He'll maybe once in a while score 2 touchdowns in a game, but it doesn't happen as often as it used to when he was with the Saints. Tier number 4, Kyle Rudolph, Delaney Walker, and Zach Ertz. This is another tier where I'm like, I like these guys, but I don't love these guys. I would probably most likely just pass up on these guys. Like Kyle Rudolph, I think is awesome, and a lot of people sleep on him because he was awesome last year. Sam Bradford really seems to love him, and Sam Bradford in his history has loved throwing to tight ends. Rudolph is a tight end touchdown machine, as we've seen, and he is another guy in this Vikings offense that he is looked at as maybe the number one or number two target in this offense. So Kyle Rudolph is a solid pick in the middle rounds. If he slips a round or two, these are the players where I'm like, I'm not gonna pick them at their value. You know what I mean? At their ADP, I'm not going to pick them. So whatever the ADP is, I'm gonna wait on these players. I'm not gonna pick them. These are players where if they slip around, I'll pick them. Like if Kyle Rudolph slips around, I'll pick him. If Delanie Walker slips around, I'll pick him. If Zach Ertz slips farther than even I would expect him to slip, then I will pick him. But I won't go out of my way to be like, I'm targeting Delanie Walker in this round and I'm gonna pick him. I'm like, okay, in whatever round Delanie Walker is going in, I'm not exactly sure. I would be like, okay, I'm probably gonna pick a depth running back or a depth receiver at this pick. But if these guys are here and they continue to slip, then I'm gonna take my value with them. Delanie Walker is another guy that, yes, a lot of people and a lot of receivers came into the Titans organization this offseason, and that's an upgrade for Marcus Mariota, but Delanie Walker is still that reliable tight end, and he's going to still put up solid receiving numbers for you. He's not going to be a guy like Jimmy Graham or a Tyler Eifert or above where you really notice the production and you notice these players winning you weeks. But with Delanie Walker, you're going to really get, what you're going to get from him is you're going to get, okay, I can just put Delanie Walker in my roster and I don't ever have to worry about picking a tight end from free agency, from the waiver wire. I can just put Delanie Walker in there and I'm like, okay, cool, I've finished my this week. Doesn't matter the matchup, whatever it is, Delanie Walker's in my lineup. That's what it is. I don't have to worry about picking up a Kobe Fleener or a CJ Fedorowicz. I just put Delanie Walker in there, and it's good. Same with Zach Ertz. And Zach Ertz is the same sort of guy. He is a reception-heavy guy. A lot of times people forget how many receptions this guy racks up every single year, but it seems like every single year he gets more and more receptions. Now, that might slightly decline with Alshon Jeffrey being there and some other receiving targets, but Zach Ertz is still reliable, very much the same way as Delanie Walker, and you can count on him. Just put him in your lineup and be like, hey, Zach Ertz is in my lineup. It's not the greatest thing. It's not Gronk or whatever. I'm not going to get like 3 touchdowns and 100 yards, but I'll get 60 yards on 6 catches, and that will be solid enough for me. Jack Doyle, not Jack Doyle. Tier number 5 includes Jack Doyle, Martellus Bennett, and Eric Ebron. Now, starting off with Martellus Bennett, which I would even maybe, I've thought about it slightly putting him in tier 4. I've really thought about it, because he is in Green Bay. But the thing about Green Bay is they have so many targets. And being a Patriots fan, I know what Martellus Bennett gave the Patriots organization. He wasn't Gronk by any means, but he was a good player. And in certain games, he kind of disappeared. And I'm not sure if that was because of game plan or not. But in certain games, he was unreliable in fantasy. But in certain other games, he was huge in fantasy. So it really depends on the game for me with Martellus Bennett. And now going to Green Bay, I think he's going to be kind of more consistent, but I don't know if he's going to put up those huge games. He probably is, because Aaron Rodgers will find him and he'll have 2 touchdowns in a game here or there. But I don't think he's going to be a guy that's going to put up a ton of yards or a ton of catches. I think in standard leagues, Martellus Bennett's going to be solid for you because every other week he's going to have a touchdown or 2, and that's going to be really good. And I think you could even see Martellus Bennett with 10 touchdowns at the end of the year. But I don't expect this guy to get anywhere near close to the elite 1,000 yards or the elite, 70-plus catches. I just don't see that for Martellus Bennett, being that Jordy Nelson, Devontae Adams, and Randall Cobb and Ty Montgomery are already in this offense vying for receptions. Martellus Bennett is just going to be that touchdown guy where he might give you a big week and win you a week every now and again, but he's not going to be Mr. Consistent. And it depends what you want to get from Martellus Bennett, and it depends if you're willing to risk, hey, he has huge upside with Aaron Rodgers, but I probably know that he's not going to be the greatest asset every single week, but every once in a while, he'll win me a week. So it depends on Martellus Bennett. But I think he will have his games and he will have his moments. That's why I have him at tier 5, but still at number 10. Number 11, I have Eric Ebron. Now, I think Eric Ebron, more so than Martellus Bennett, is going to be better for you in PPR leagues because I think with Anquan Bolden gone, they need that third target to step up, and even Eric Ebron could be considered that second target because you have Golden Tate, who's going to get 90-plus receptions. You have Marvin Jones, who's going to be the big play guy down the field, but not necessarily catch a lot of balls. And then you have Eric Ebron. You also have Theo Riddick and Amir Abdullah, but Eric Ebron is kind of that third, maybe even the second target in the passing game. I think we really saw some progression from him as a receiver last season. He had good games. He had good moments. He took steps forward. I think this season he's going to take even more steps forward. Matt Stafford seems to have a good chemistry with him. They're kind of working on that, and I think Eric Ebron's going to be a guy that I'll target, as well as Jack Doyle. Both of these guys, I just always seem to be I seem to be drafting them because every single time in my drafts, I'm in that area where Eric Ebron and Jack Doyle are on the clock, and I'm like, well, I don't really like the guys at running back, and I don't love the guys at receiver at this point, and I probably already have a lot at each position, so hey, I'm going to take Eric Ebron because I see the upside, or hey, I'm going to take Jack Doyle because I see the upside. I think both these guys could be tight end ones, and I think they will finish as tight end ones. Jack Doyle is going to be the number one tight end, as you can see by his contract and Dwayne Allen leaving in Indianapolis. Now, of course, T.Y. Hilton's going to be the number one, Moncrief the number two, which he's been injured every once in a while. The third receiver will be Kamar Aiken, but I think the third target will be Jack Doyle. And I think specifically in the red zone, that's where Jack Doyle will thrive. You see a lot of these plays on the PA boots and the PA slides and stuff with the Colts. They like to throw those short little dump-off passes to Jack Doyle, let him work. I think that's going to be the same way this season. I think you'll see games where he has 7-8 receptions, and you'll see games where he has 2-3 receptions but has a touchdown. I think he's going to be consistent. It's just not going to be Zach Ertz where it's 6 receptions, 60 yards but no touchdowns, and it's not going to be Martellus Bennett where it's Martellus Bennett's not really a good example because he's kind of sporadic, but maybe Kyle Rudolph where he doesn't catch a lot of passes but he catches a lot of touchdowns. But with Jack Doyle, I think it's going to be mixed up. It's going to be 1 week he'll have a lot of catches, 1 week he'll have 1 or 2 touchdowns. And that's just the way Andrew Luck plays. That's the way the Colts offense plays. And I like Jack Doyle this season. I think he has a high upside due to the fact that he is the only tight end they can trust now, and they've been running a 2 tight end set for a long time. And also, I think he'll be the third target in the offense. And then tier number 6 is the bunch of guys after that. So you have Hunter Henry, you have Kobe Fleener, Jason Witten, Austin Hooper, Charles Clay, Ben Watson, CJ Fedorowicz, and Julius Thomas. So I'm going to throw out Hunter Henry here. He's ranked 13th on my board. And I'm going to put him beside Antonio Gates. Now, they're not tied, but I'm just going to throw Antonio Gates in the conversation. I feel like Antonio Gates isn't being drafted a lot, and he's being drafted very late due to the fact that a lot of people think Hunter Henry is going to take his place and really have a huge year. Now, I'm on the fence with this. I think Hunter Henry is very talented, but I do consider the fact that the Chargers already have a lot of targets, and I don't know how many are going to go to Hunter Henry and how much that's going to be split up with Antonio Gates. Both guys scored a lot of touchdowns last year, and that's going to be good for you in standard leagues especially. But I think Antonio Gates is going to be utilized more in the third down situations in the red zone. And he's also going to be used more at the beginning of the year because they want to get him that record. But I think as the season wears on, you're going to see more and more of Hunter Henry. And I think Hunter Henry could be one of those guys that breaks out. Now, I don't see him having a huge top 5 tight end year, but I could see him having a tight end number 1 year. And he's currently being drafted somewhere around that. I think his ADP might be slightly high, and I think I have him slightly lower than his ADP right now. So Hunter Henry's a guy that I never really see myself drafting just because I feel like he's going too high for my taste. But that's just me personally. I do see the upside with him. I just don't think that it's worth me picking him when I see players behind him that I feel have the same ability. Antonio Gates, I think he could be at the last pick of your draft or one of the last rounds. He could give you some good weeks here and there against good matchups, and especially at the beginning of the year. If you're looking to maybe, waiver wire the tight end position, it would be a smart pick to pick Antonio Gates at the end of your draft, maybe the last pick or the third last pick when you're picking your defense and your kickers. it would be a good pick to pick Gates just to start off the year, because if you're going to waiver wire your tight end every week, Gates, I think, will have a start. Like the first 4 weeks, he'll be very strong. So that's my opinion on Gates. Number 14 is Coby Fleener. Now, Coby Fleener was a pretty big disappointment last year. He was going pretty high in drafts. This year, I think he's going to be better, and I think people are not really going to realize it because everyone's going to be down on him this year. But I think people need to realize that he's not going to be terrible like he was last year. He had so many receptions near the end zone and the red zone area. He's going to score touchdowns. Drew Brees loves throwing the tight end the football in the red zone. I see him scoring touchdowns. I see him being an asset for you in fantasy. Even though he's not a great player, I love the situation he's in. I love the targets he gets. He's the clear-cut tight end number 1. Brandon Cooks is gone, and Ted Ginn isn't going to replace all of that value. So Coby Fleener is going to be a solid addition to your team, where he's probably going a little bit, he's going later than he should. Next is Jason Witten at 15. I don't need to see much here. He's Mr. Consistent. He's going to catch passes. He's not going to be sexy. He's not going to be a great upside pick for you. He's a very safe floor pick. So maybe if you have a Gronk on your team and you're really skeptical about his health, pick Jason Witten and you won't really be mad. Number 16 is Austin Hooper. This is a guy that I find myself picking a lot too, because I think he has a very high upside. In the Atlanta offense, this is an offense that is very pass heavy. It's a balanced offense, but they love to use their tight end. I saw Austin Hooper. He has a lot of talent. He made an amazing catch in the Super Bowl for a touchdown. I think the more and more as the season wore on last year, he got more and more involved. You saw what ability he does have. I think they're going to implement that into their offense. I think Austin Hooper is going to be a good pick. And this is the difference between Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper for me. Austin Hooper is going way later than Hunter Henry, and I feel like they have just about the same value due to the fact that, they're both in similar offenses, and Antonio Gates is going to take receptions away from Hunter Henry. So I like where Austin Hooper's going, and I find myself picking him most of the time, as well as some of the other guys that I've already mentioned. Number 17 is Charles Clay. Charles Clay had one of the best tight end second halves of the season, and a lot of people didn't realize that. But in Buffalo, this could be a very sneaky pick because they don't have anyone to throw to other than Sammy Watkins. So Charles Clay for Tyrod Taylor could be a very consistent option down the stretch for them. I think this could be a real big sleeper in fantasy this year, especially in PPR leagues, because I think he'll be targeted a lot due to the fact that Tyrod Taylor doesn't have a lot of other options to go to. At number 18 is Ben Watson. Why is Ben Watson at 18? Well, he's going to be the starting tight end for Baltimore. And if you know anything about the Baltimore offense, they love their tight ends. Dennis Pitta, I believe, led the league in receptions last year, or he was second behind Travis Kelce. So Ben Watson has the ability. We've seen it in the past with the Patriots and the Saints. Yes, he's old, but they have no one really else at the tight end position that hasn't been hurt or left that they can go to. And Joe Flacco is going to throw the ball. He's going to throw the ball a lot. They threw the ball the most over the past 2 seasons, and a lot of those have been going to the tight end position. I think Ben Watson is a very sleeper, sneaky pick. At number 19 is CJ Fedorowicz. I have him here. I would have him higher if Brock Osweiler was the quarterback because he loves CJ Fedorowicz, but I think CJ will probably be the 3rd or 4th option in this Houston offense, and he's not a guy that has a huge potential, but I feel like if, again, you want to take a backup guy and you have a guy like Jordan Reed or Gronk where they get injured, CJ Fedorowicz isn't a bad pick. Also, he could play well in the waiver wire pickups. If you're picking a guy up for the waiver wire, he could play well in, against some bad passing defenses. And also just throw in the fact that, he had a good year last year, and I really just want to see what he's like with a different quarterback. That's really it. At number 20 is Julius Thomas, my last tight end on the rankings. I only put Julius Thomas here because we've seen him have great seasons in the past. He was in Jacksonville, kind of got lost. They didn't use their tight end a lot. But in Miami, it's going to be interesting to see if they do. So I threw him in here just because, hey, maybe he could be a guy that has a huge ceiling because we've seen him score a lot of touchdowns in the past. But we don't really know. So that's just my question, right? He got traded to Miami for a reason. They wanted a tight end. They needed a tight end. Maybe he'll provide some value, but another guy that will be on the waiver wire that occasionally will have big weeks. Keep your eye out for these players. Cam Brate and OJ Howard. Now, I didn't put them in my rankings just because I feel like they could easily go 19 and 20 easily. But I just don't know how that target share is going to work out yet. So I'm kind of skeptical. Maybe in the August rankings, they'll be higher and they'll be on my lists. But I don't think OJ Howard, and really no rookie tight end has had a huge year. I think OJ Howard is going to be good. And especially in the long term. But I think Cam Brate could be the guy that a lot of people are sleeping on and could be that actual guy that is more of the starting tight end, at least for the first season of OJ Howard's career. Also, David Njoku, of course, he's going to be the starting tight end in Cleveland, and I think he'll have the fair share of value, but he is on Cleveland. So, there you go. Evan Ingram is another guy that has eye upside. He's in the Giants offense that likes to pass the ball. And he's basically a receiver, but they also have 3 other targets they need to go to, including Odell, Marshall, Sterling Shepard. You throw in Shane Vereen in the backfield. So Evan Ingram's rather the 4th or 5th target in this offense. Has some upside because he is a rookie and is a dynamic player, but I don't see him having a great rookie season. Zach Miller for Chicago, he could be a sleeper in fantasy. If he is the starting tight end for this team, and he could definitely provide some value due to the fact they don't have a lot of reliable targets in Chicago. Jared Cook is another guy. I wouldn't go out of my way to pick him. He does have sexiness. You know, he had some bright spots in Green Bay last year, especially in the playoffs, but Jared Cook isn't a guy I'm really drafting. He's just a guy that I think against good matchups could have good weeks in Oakland, and he's definitely going to be the number 1 tight end there. And Jesse James in Pittsburgh could be a sneaky, PPR play every once in a while, especially if some guys in Pittsburgh start going down with injury. He's on a good offense, but he's just Zach Miller, or he's not Zach Miller, he's Heath Miller to me at the end of his career. He's a guy that's going to have 5 catches for 50 yards occasionally, but he's not going to put up any sexy numbers. So those are the fantasy tight end rankings for July 2017. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, Gronk spike the like button and subscribe for more fantasy football content. Again, fantasy football draft kit here on the Bottom Line View, rankings, mock drafts, player outlooks, and more. Stay tuned to the Bottom Line View. Subscribe, like the videos, and thank you guys for supporting our NFL content. Peace out.